911 with the location of the emergency.
My daughter is missing. She's gone. We can't find her anywhere. I've called all her friends.
How old is she?
11.
And when was the last time that she was seen?
It was at 6 o'clock, Street. Around 6 o'clock.
The body of a beautiful 11-year-old girl, Carlie Brucia, has been found. Joseph Smith is under arrest for the abduction and murder of Carlie.
The defendant is guilty of murder in the first
Smith was sentenced to death, but this week a circuit judge ordered that he be given a new sentencing trial. This all stems from a recent Supreme Court ruling requiring juries to be unanimous when sentencing someone to death.
On February 1st, 2004, it was an incredibly packed day in the United States. The Super Bowl pulled in the biggest audience in history. Almost 90 million people tuned in to watch the New England Patriots beat the Carolina Panthers 32-29. During the halftime break, there was a performance featuring Justin Timberlake and Janet Jackson, and that moment would later turn into one of the most talked about pop culture events of the 2000s. For a lot of football fans, the celebration was really just getting started. And suddenly, I caught myself wondering, wait a second, are the cities where you guys are watching from actually football cities? Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. I'm genuinely really curious about that. Alright, let's keep going. But over in Sarasota, Florida, the situation was completely different. While all of that was happening, there were massive searches underway for an 11-year-old girl who had vanished without a trace. The truth was about to come out, and it was so disturbing, so deeply unsettling, that it would permanently shatter the lives of her family, the community, the police officers involved, and honestly, it would shake the entire country. Carlie Jane Brewer was born on March 16th, 1992, on Long Island, to her parents, Joe and Susan. The following year, they divorced, and Carrie moved with her mom to Sarasota, Florida. Even so, she stayed close to her family back on Long Island, visiting regularly during winter and summer breaks, and she especially loved being there around Christmas time. Later on, Susan remarried and had a son with her husband, Stephen. Carrie was described as a very energetic kid. Her teachers said she was sweet and charming, and the school principal even called her a shining light. She absolutely adored her cat. Charlie was a big fan of Jennifer Lopez, loved going to the mall, and just hanging out with her friends. At McIntosh Middle School, where she was in the 6th grade, Carrie was known for greeting everyone with big hugs and a warm smile. She sang in the choir, was really into sports, and honestly, she was just one of those people who truly, genuinely loved life. The day before, Carrie had spent time at a friend's house. They even had a sleepover. Around 6:15 p.m, she left to head home, which was only about 1 mile away, because she was planning to watch the Super Bowl with her family. Her friend's mum decided to call Susan, just to double check if it was okay for Carrie to walk home by herself. Susan said no, she didn't want her daughter walking along Bridge Road, especially since it could be busy, and she clearly hadn't given permission for Carrie to go alone. She talked it over with her husband, Stephen, and he got in the car to pick her up. The streets were relatively quiet. Most families were inside, gathered around their TVs, watching the Super Bowl. But as Stephen drove around the neighborhood, panic started to set in. He couldn't find Carrie anywhere. She had vanished, completely without a trace. About 1 hour later, a call came into 911, and Carrie Brewer was officially reported missing.
911 with the location of the emergency.
My daughter is missing. She's gone. We can't find her anywhere. I've called all her friends.
How old is she?
11.
And when was the last time that she was seen?
It was at 6 o'clock, Street. Around 6 o'clock.
Police were dispatched immediately. Not long after, officers arrived at Carrie's home. They spoke with all of her friends, trying to find out if anyone had seen or heard from her, and they went door to door, hoping for, any piece of information at all. They also talked to the friend Carrie had stayed with, and to her mother. That's when they learned Carrie had been a little upset. The day before, there had been an argument between her mum and her stepdad, and Carrie had wanted to leave earlier and go home so she could spend time with Susan. As the news spread, the search effort kept growing. Police continued working until 3 a.m, but there was still no sign of Carlie anywhere. By that point, she had been missing for 12 hours. She had last been seen the day before, and when her classmates showed up at school, everyone expected to see her there, but she never arrived. Once Carrie didn't show up for school, police decided to bring in search dogs to try to pick up her scent, using one of her pillowcases. A bloodhound named Ruby tracked the scent to the area behind a car wash called E's Car Wash, located at 4715 Bridge Road, and that's where the trail suddenly stopped. Police immediately secured the area and spoke with the owner of the car wash, Mike Evanoff. He told them the property was equipped with security cameras that were triggered by motion. Footage from one camera showed the busy main road, but an empty parking lot. Another camera, from a different angle, also didn't capture anything suspicious. Then they checked a camera position behind the car wash. This one was motion activated, and when officers hit play, a recording from 6:21 p.m. came up the exact time Carrie disappeared. On the screen was a young girl wearing a red t-shirt, blue jeans, and a pink backpack. That was exactly what Carrie had been wearing the last time she was seen. Then, suddenly, another person appeared in the frame, a man. He looked to be about 5 feet 8 inches tall, with dark hair and a tattoo on his arm. He was wearing a mechanic's work uniform with a name tag, but the name was too blurry to read. He stopped in front of the girl, and they spoke for a few seconds. Then he grabbed her by the arm and led her away. Even though the clip lasted only a few seconds, it painted a truly disturbing picture. To every officer watching, it was clear that Carrie was in serious danger. Carrie's stepfather, Stephen, was then asked to come to the police station to speak with investigators.
Susan says, "Hey, can you go pick up Carlie?" She started walking down Beers. And I just said, "Where's she at?" She goes, "Connie's." I said, "That's the one over here." And she said, "Yeah." I said, "Okay, I'm leaving right now." And out the door I went. Okay.
Stephen explained that he knew right away something was wrong, because Carrie would never act like this. She always called and kept her parents updated where she was and what she was doing. Based on phone records, Stephen was quickly ruled out as a suspect. But then he said something that really mattered. He told police that while he was driving along Bridge Road searching for Carrie, he noticed a red pickup truck going back and forth in the area. That same truck pulled into the car wash. He also said that when he arrived at the friend's house, the exact place Carrie had left from there was a red pickup truck parked nearby. Stephen was sure it was the same vehicle he'd seen earlier. The man in the surveillance video was wearing a mechanic-style work uniform, the kind of clothing tow truck drivers often wear. The owner of that truck, a man named Ron, lived at the friend's house and had been there that night. He was immediately brought in for questioning.
Carlie spent the night Saturday?
Yes.
Anything?
Sunday morning, I woke up. I don't know. Nothing happened Saturday night. Okay. You know, they were giddying all night long. You know, I was sleeping in the other room. So I woke up Sunday morning, like I normally do, get up, get ready for work.
So if you didn't see her at any point after...
During the day?
During the day, or if you went to work?
Absolutely not.
Is that what you wore to work Sunday? Or did you...
No, actually I had a Super Bowl shirt on yesterday. A great shirt.
They showed him a photo of Carrie alongside the man near the car wash.
Who's that?
I haven't the slightest idea, so definitely not me. It does look like me, doesn't it, though?
Yeah, it kind of looks like you. That's why we're talking to you.
Wow. Yeah, that definitely would not be me there. To be honest.
The deputies that you spoke to that night think that that's you.
Okay, it's not me. Blow it up. Do what you got to do. You verify my time, where I was. You know? I'm more glad to work for you guys than anything, believe me. There is no way, I mean, that was me. Honest to God. No way at all. I would never put anybody through that. No way.
How do we get past that, though? That's
verifying where I was at 6:21.
Police contacted his employer and were able to confirm that Ron was at work during that time. His time cards backed it up as well. They searched his truck, but didn't find anything. Ron was officially ruled out as a suspect. But that only meant one thing: investigators still had no idea who the man in the video was, or where he had taken Carlie. The footage was also shown to Susan, but she couldn't recognize the man either. And for the community, this was terrifying. Joe pointed out that people had been less than 300 feet away from where the abduction happened. There were people around, he said. This happened in broad daylight. A reward of $25,000 was announced for any information that could help catch the kidnapper. Police decided to go back and review the surveillance footage one more time, looking for any extra detail they might have missed. When they rewound the video slightly, they noticed something new, a pale yellow 1992 Buick Century station wagon, pulling into the parking lot just 3 minutes before Carlie was taken. Then the Buick pulled back out onto Bridge Road, slowed down right next to the car wash, and turned in. And finally, that gave investigators a new lead. The search continued. A lot of people got involved. Missing child flyers were posted on poles and handed out to anyone walking by. The community was completely determined they weren't going to overlook a single detail. The mayor even called Carlie the child of Sarasota. They were not going to stop until she was found. Carlie's mother, Susan, then spoke at a press conference.
"I want to speak directly to my Carrie," she said. "I love you. I have my phone on at all times. I'm begging, I'm pleading, please help bring my daughter home."
Her father added, "Carrie, if you can hear this, your mum is at home, and she's waiting for you." 2 days had passed since Carlie was taken. Then, one woman was watching the news and saw the surveillance video from the car wash. She called her husband over so he could see it too. And almost immediately, they both came to the same realization. They recognized the man. It was her former business partner.
I worked with him at a repair shop, so I knew exactly how he looked, the sneakers, the haircut, the way he walked. And when I saw him reach toward that little girl, it hit me. That's the same way he used to reach for his tools. I recognized it instantly. I knew it was him.
Her husband called the police and gave the man's name and address to Detective Vincent Reaver. Detective Reaver, along with another officer, drove to that address in an unmarked vehicle and met up with 2 additional officers. A neighbor told them someone was definitely home. The officers knocked on the front door and waited. No one answered. One of the officers then called a supervisor for guidance, and that's when they learned something important. The man they were there for was actually on probation. He had already violated probation conditions twice in the past, but had not been sent back to jail. After that, they contacted his probation officer and asked them to come to the house. About 45 minutes later, a woman arrived at the scene. It turned out she was the man's sister. She agreed to go inside, call him out, and have him come speak with the officers. And then he was standing right there in front of them, Joseph Peter Smith, 37 years old, a father of 3, originally from Brooklyn. Joseph Smith had a long criminal record and was unemployed at the time. He had at least 13 arrests in the state going back to 1993, including charges related to heroin possession and prescription drug fraud. He had served 17 months in custody, and just 8 days after his release, he was arrested again, this time for cocaine possession, and sentenced to 3 years of probation. In the past, he had also been arrested, charged, and later acquitted in a case involving kidnapping and false imprisonment. Very recently, he had violated the terms of his probation again, but had been released anyway. And the woman who recognized him from the news was not the first person to mention his name to detectives. Out of more than 800 tips police received after releasing the surveillance footage of Carlie's abduction, several people had also called in, saying they believed the man in the video was Joseph Smith. Joseph drove a brown Lincoln, not the Buick station wagon that had been seen on Bridge Road and stopping at the car wash before turning in. While officers worked to identify the owner of the Buick, 2 detectives sat down and spoke with Joseph Smith. They asked him what he had been doing on the day Carlie disappeared and whether he had been at the car wash. He said he had not. One officer then asked to take a closer look at his tattoos. At that point, Joseph asked why they were even there and why they were talking to him. They explained that they were investigating a child abduction. He said he didn't understand what they were talking about, so they showed him a still image from the surveillance video. "That looks like me, but it's not me," he said. Joseph agreed to let officers search his car and the room he rented. He didn't seem nervous and was cooperative with detectives. During the search of his room, nothing connecting him to Carlie was found. However, officers did discover a mechanic-style work uniform with a name badge on the chest. They also searched his vehicle and found drug paraphernalia inside. Because of that, Joseph was arrested for violating the terms of his probation and for possession of drug paraphernalia. While the brown Lincoln was being searched, one of the homeowners, where Joseph rented his room, arrived at the property. Her name was Naomi. She showed up driving a yellow Buick station wagon. Officers asked her if she knew anything about where Joseph had been on the day Carlie was last seen. Naomi said that around 6:30 p.m., Joseph had been on the phone talking to his estranged wife. That statement gave him an alibi. Once again, investigators found themselves right back at square one, and time was slipping away. But just a few hours later, new information would surface. Naomi's husband, Jeff, came to the police station. He was the one who actually drove that Buick station wagon, and he told detectives that his wife had remembered things wrong, she had made a mistake.
Joe came out and said, "Hey, can I use your car?" I said, "Well, just go and just, how are you going to be for 15 minutes? So I said, "All right, go ahead." What was you wearing at the time? His mechanic suit. Gray. Yellow. When I got up at 6:30, no car. 7:30, I'm ready to get a walk out the door. Who shows up? Joe. Where the hell have you been? What do you look like 7:30 Monday morning? Real clean. Like, he had a good night's sleep, or he's real happy, or he just looked like he had a wonderful night. It was just, the way he acted, from what I know, was just very strange. And then I see the stuff on the news. You know something? I guess there was a dark side, just never saw it.
Jeff realized something had happened inside the car. Things had been moved around, and the back seat was folded down. He turned the Buick over to the Sarasota County Sheriff's Office so it could be processed for forensic testing and analysis. With this new information from Jeff, Joseph's whereabouts during that critical time could no longer be confirmed, and now it was clear he was the one driving the station wagon during that window. Joseph was read his Miranda rights, and after that, he asked for a lawyer.
We gotta sit down and we have to talk. This room, it's not the truth. It's the most important thing that goes on in this room, is the truth.
I was already advised to talk to a lawyer.
Who advised you? Okay, correct. That means you and I can't.
We should talk to a lawyer.
On the evening of February 4th, Joseph's brother, John, went to the police station and spoke with the FBI. He explained that he and Joseph weren't on great terms. He also said that on the evening of February 1st, the same day Carrie was abducted, Joseph had called him around 8 p.m. They didn't speak the following day. John and his girlfriend were watching TV when the news aired, the surveillance video of Carrie's abduction. The face, the hair, the mechanic's uniform, John recognized the man immediately. His girlfriend did too. What really stood out to her was the way he walked. After back surgery, Joseph's gait had changed, and it was unmistakable. Later that same night, around 11 p.m., Joseph showed up at John's house, looking like he might have been under the influence of something. John said he didn't let his brother inside, because in the past, Joseph had repeatedly stared inappropriately at his girlfriend's teenage daughter. Even though Joseph was wearing his usual mechanic's work uniform, he wasn't wearing his regular sneakers. Instead, he had on boots he had never worn before. The only thing Joseph said was, "Do you want to talk about something?" John said no, and shut the door. The next day, when Joseph showed up at work, he was acting strangely. He kept washing his hands over and over, even though they were already clean. He also told his boss that he might suddenly need to leave the state, urgently. John told officers, "I don't have any direct proof. It's just, he looks like that man, he walks the same way. And the more I watch that video, and then look at him, the more I see an exact match." Investigators knew they needed a confession from Joseph if they wanted even a small chance of finding Carrie. John told them straight up that if his brother was truly guilty, he would never admit it. "He'll take this to the grave," he said. "If it was him, you're not going to get the truth out of him." He advised the FBI to focus on building more evidence instead. Not long after that, it was announced that detectives had reached out to NASA for help enhancing the surveillance footage from the car wash, trying to make out what was written on the name badge. And yeah, they were able to do it. The name on the badge read Joe. The arrest report also stated that he had deliberately and strategically maneuvered the Buick station wagon, planning his movements in advance to hide his actions and position himself close to Carrie. The evidence was piling up. But then, the case took an unexpected turn. Joseph spoke privately with his brother and their mother. About 1.5 hours later, John came back out and said that Joseph had come close to confessing, like really close, but in the end, he never actually said anything. Neither John nor their mother were questioned any further by officers, and no surveillance was placed on them. After leaving the station that evening, John called the FBI and said, "I'm guessing you've already heard." What am I supposed to do now? The FBI agents were confused. They honestly had no idea what he was talking about. John believed his phone was being tapped. It wasn't. And that's when everything suddenly clicked. Clearly, Joseph had called his brother and said something about Carrie, and John, thinking the call was being monitored, was now calling back to pass that information along. 3 officers, including 2 FBI agents, immediately headed to John's house, and that's where the truth finally came out. John gave them exact directions on where to find her. 6221 Proctor Road, near I-75. At around 1 a.m., in thick brush, in a field behind Central Church of Christ, Carrie's body was found. She was unclothed, below the waist, only a single sock remained on her right foot. There was a deep ligature mark around her neck. FBI agents took John back to the police station for another interview. That's when he admitted he had lied earlier, when he walked out of the interview room and told officers that Joseph hadn't said anything. In reality, Joseph had told him, "I'm sorry for what I did to you." After that, their mother left the room, and Joseph kept talking. He said that on the day of the abduction, he had taken a substance he believed was cocaine, and from that point on, everything that happened afterward was, just a blur to him. It felt like he was scared to actually say the words. Like, "She's dead." So I just said it for him. I said, "Okay, Joe, she's dead. Fine. Where is she? Where is she? We have to find her. Where is she?" After leaving the police station, John and his mother drove to the church to look for her, but they didn't find anything. Later on, Joseph told them that she was actually in the field behind the church. John told the agents he hadn't mentioned any of this earlier because he didn't believe what Joseph was saying, and because Joseph never directly confessed to killing Carrie. He said he went out there purely out of curiosity, just to see if any part of Joseph's story was even true. According to John, if he had found Carrie alive, his plan was to set her free, give her some money, take a photo, sell it to the media, and then use that money to hire a really good lawyer for Joseph. Eventually, Joseph confessed to sexually assaulting Carrie inside the vehicle. Later, he admitted that he had raped her. A storm was... Later, the Sarasota medical examiner examined Carrie's body. He determined that she had been dragged into the field and strangled from behind using ligature strangulation. Marks on her wrists showed she had been restrained. Joseph's DNA was found in semen on her t-shirt. Investigators later stated that the statistical chance of a random DNA match from a Caucasian male was 1 in 32 quintillion. And that wasn't all. 2 of Carrie's hairs were found inside the Buick. Investigators also recovered 7 fibers from the vehicle's interior that matched the fibers from Carrie's red t-shirt. Joseph had thrown her clothing and her pink backpack into different dumpsters, trying to cover his tracks. Then came the task every officer dreads. That responsibility fell to Sheriff Bill Borwell. He was the one who had to tell Susan the truth. He drove to her home and told her what had happened. Susan screamed.
"He killed my daughter. He killed my daughter. He killed my baby."
After that, Sheriff Bill Borwell had to address the public as well. His voice was shaking as he said,
The body of a beautiful 11-year-old girl, Carlie Brucia, has been found. Joseph Smith is under arrest for the abduction and murder of Carlie.
Friends, family, and members of the local community who had taken part in the search gathered near the church to lay flowers and honor her memory. McIntosh Middle School announced that, after the news of her body being found, the school would open its doors to the community and offer psychological support to anyone affected. The scale of the tragedy was so overwhelming that parents were afraid to even let their daughters walk to the mailbox by themselves. The community held a vigil outside her home, showing Carrie and her family just how deeply they were loved and supported. Banners and signs read, "We love you, Carlie." Her father, Joe, thanked everyone who had taken part and said, "I just want to thank everyone standing behind me for the effort you put into searching for my daughter, and the entire community that stepped up and helped so much. I truly, sincerely thank every single one of you for everything you did." Joseph spoke with his mother. The conversation went like this.
Oh, Joe, the best thing you can do right now is try to say that it was an accident.
But it was an accident, Mom.
I know that Joe...
Ooh, don't think I would have done this on purpose. Do you, Mom?
No, I don't think that at all, Joe. Not at all. I know you better than that. But everyone is furious. The community, the press, the governor, the mayor. You have no idea, Joe.
Carrie's memorial service took place on February 10th, and a huge number of people came, including Sheriff Bill Borwell. For everyone there, it felt like a devastating ending. Honestly, the exact outcome they had feared the most, and the one they had been praying so hard would never happen. Joseph Peter Smith was charged with kidnapping, 1 count of sexual assault, and formally charged with first-degree murder. Because the crime happened in Florida, he was facing the possibility of the death penalty. Captain Jeff Bell stated, "We are fully prepared to do our duty, and make sure he pays the highest possible price for what he did to her." While Joseph was in custody awaiting trial, a letter he wrote to his brother was intercepted. It was written in a coded message that was later deciphered. The letter said, "I wish I could say something spicy. Okay? I dumped the backpack and the clothes in 4 different dumpsters. I left her out in the open. I dragged the body to where it was found. Destroy this after you decode it, and keep your mouth shut." Carrie's grandmother passed away, and some people said she simply couldn't survive the grief, that she died of what they called a broken heart. Her grandfather left the United States and moved to Europe, where he later passed away as well. Carrie's uncle crashed his truck into a tree and died from his injuries. There were reports that some believed it was intentional, that he may have taken his own life. About 1 month before the trial was set to begin, Joseph's defense attorney tried to have the car wash surveillance video excluded from the case, along with the confession Joseph allegedly made to his brother while in jail. The defense argued that the prosecution couldn't properly prove the authenticity of the digital footage, or even confirm the accuracy of the date and timestamp on the recording, and because of that, they claimed the evidence should not be allowed in court. The defense also argued that when the FBI arranged for Joseph to speak with his brother after Joseph had already invoked his right to remain silent and requested a lawyer, it amounted to an unlawful interrogation. An FBI agent responded that it was actually John who insisted on speaking with his brother, hoping to get answers from him, and that the conversation only took place after Joseph's attorneys had given their approval. It was finally time for Joseph Smith to stand trial. The evidence was overwhelming: the car wash surveillance video, the evidence recovered from the Buick, proof that he had been driving the station wagon at the critical time, the DNA found on her clothing, and the fact that he was able to direct investigators to the exact location where her body was found. It was a brutal and deeply painful process, without a doubt, for everyone who had hoped, searched, and stood by her family. Hearing the details of what happened to her was almost unbearable. Among the witnesses was John, Joseph's brother, but even that came with serious issues. Prosecutor Deborah Reaver asked Judge Andrew Owens to declare John a hostile witness. At the time, John himself was facing charges related to drug possession and armed robbery. It was reported that while testifying, John admitted he was under the influence of crack cocaine. After all the evidence was presented, the jury didn't take long to reach a verdict. Just a few weeks later, on December 1st, the jury voted 10-2 in favor of sentencing Joseph Smith to death by lethal injection. Joseph asked the judge for mercy, saying he did it for the sake of his family. But on March 15th of the following year, the judge officially handed down the sentence death for the crimes he had committed. The judge said Carrie endured unimaginable suffering, beginning from the very moment she was taken. The image of the defendant grabbing her by the arm and leading her away is something that has, without question, been permanently burned into our memory. At 11 years old, there is no doubt that she understood the hopelessness of her situation and realized that her chances of escape were almost non-existent. Her death was conscious, ruthless, carefully planned, and deliberately carried out. Joseph Smith, through your actions, you have forfeited the right to live freely among us. May God have mercy on your soul. After the jury handed down the decision to impose the death penalty, Joseph made a statement in which he said, in part, "I want you to know that I take full responsibility for these crimes. I don't know how all of this happened. I was extremely angry with myself, and I was heavily under the influence of drugs. I knew using drugs was wrong, but I couldn't stop. I'm not trying to make excuses for what happened, but the truth is, I honestly remember almost nothing about that day," he said. After the death sentence was handed down, Carrie's stepfather Stephen later admitted, "I thought I'd feel completely different, but it still hurts. It doesn't change anything. I just feel like Carrie was finally heard. Her soul is gone. Now all that's left is to wait and watch Joe Smith die." Carrie's mother was not in the courtroom when the sentence was announced, because at that time she was in jail on charges related to prostitution and drugs. She later said that she turned to drugs to numb the unbearable pain of losing her daughter. After Joseph was sent to death row, he filed several appeals challenging his sentence. For a long time, none of them were successful. But then, everything was about to change.
The defendant is guilty of murder in the first
Smith
degree
was
charge.
sentenced to death, but this week a circuit judge ordered that he be given a new sentencing trial. This all stems from a recent Supreme Court ruling requiring juries to be unanimous when sentencing someone to death.
I don't feel it has anything to do about justice or the law.
Carlie's father, Joe Brucia, is furious.
They seem indifferent to the victims and their families. They think they can just do these things without affecting people, but it affects people a lot. He does not deserve to live on the taxpayers' expense any longer.
Joe Brucia and his family are writing letters asking the governor and the attorney general to step in.
Do the right thing. Do what the state of Florida promised my family and I, and that is to put Joseph Smith to death. And that's, he killed my daughter.
In 2016, the U.S. Supreme Court declared the Florida law unconstitutional since the death penalty could be imposed without a unanimous jury verdict. In 2018, the Florida Supreme Court also dropped Smith's death sentence. It was reinstated in 2020. Now, nearly a year later, the Florida Supreme Court has ordered a new sentencing hearing for Smith. A circuit court will only consider Smith's sentence and not his conviction. A hearing date has yet to be set.
"I'll lend you for a little while, a child of mine," God said.
Don Betts.
To me, it's just a nice place to spend some of my time.
Thinks about Carlie Brucia more than most.
They found her was right on the edge of the, just about where this rock is.
He's the caretaker of her memorial at the Central Church of Christ. He comes here to reflect about Brucia, and he remembers his own granddaughter, who was murdered years ago.
When you lose someone, a family member, it's just nice to have a place to go sit and enjoy the solitude.
He's unsure what to think of the news that Brucia's killer, Joseph Smith, is going to be resentenced.
I have real mixed feelings about it. Another life taken doesn't bring Carlie back, but at the same time, like I say, justice should be carried out to whatever extent of the law.
Joe harshly criticized the justice system, saying, "I feel completely betrayed by the justice system because Joseph Smith was on parole before he ever got to my daughter. He was supposed to be sent back to prison for 5 years if he violated the conditions. He did violate them. He was found, quote, unconscious in a parking lot with a bag of cocaine. And instead of enforcing the punishment that had been promised, they put him on what they called drug offender probation. That's just wordplay and legal technicalities. And because of that, my daughter isn't here today, he said. They've been dragging this case out from 2005 to 2021, and it still isn't over. So yeah, I carry a lot of anger and a lot of contempt toward the criminal justice system. While searching for information online, Joe realized he wasn't the only parent grieving a child who was allegedly killed by someone who was on parole or probation at the time. He started to see that this wasn't just his family's tragedy, this was a nationwide problem. Joe reached out to Representative Katherine Harris and asked her to do something, anything, so that Carrie's death wouldn't be meaningless, and so no other parents would ever have to go through this kind of pain. Not long after, Katherine Harris introduced a legislative proposal known as Carrie's Law. At a press conference, she said,
"We need to act immediately to protect our children from repeat offenders who take the second chance given to them by society and use it to commit new acts of violence."
Representative Nick Lamson of Texas later joined as a co-sponsor of the bill. He said, "Even if we can't prevent tragedies like this entirely, we still have a responsibility to respond and to help protect our communities." The proposed law would have required federal offenders to be taken back into custody if they committed another serious felony, a crime involving intent of sexual contact with someone under 16, or any violent offense. It also included plans to extend funding for the Amber Alert program for an additional 1 year, allowing faster distribution of information about abducted and at-risk children. Because of the significant costs the law was expected to require, it faced strong opposition. The head of the state prison system stated that reincarcerating people with criminal histories like Joseph Smith would cost nearly $1 billion. Joe responded by saying, "I find it deeply offensive when they say this costs too much. No one has the right to put a price on my daughter's head, or on the life of any child." Carlie's Law was not passed initially due to a lack of time. However, Representative Harris promised to reintroduce the bill and expand its scope. "The foundation will remain Carlie's Law," she said, "but the expansion will focus on closing other gaps when it comes to protecting children from exploitation. There is nothing more traumatic than the exploitation or murder of a child." According to her, everyone had been profoundly affected by Carlie's death, and the goal of the law was to do everything possible to make sure something like this would never happen again. Despite those promises, Carlie's Law was never reintroduced.
It's hard to believe 10 years ago this week, a little Sarasota girl was abducted at a car wash, sparking a search that captured the attention of the entire country.
10 years ago today, the world witnessed a kidnapping caught on tape. Carlie Brucia would be found days later, murdered. She was only 11. Her body left behind a church. And now, a decade later, that church still honors that little girl by trying to protect other children.
Such a tragic to Carlie, but it's helped a lot of young other kids now.
Stephen Kanzler, Carlie Brucia's stepfather, addressing the large crowd gathered at the Central Church of Christ. Her mother, Susan Shorpen, too emotional to speak, at the place her daughter's body was found 4 days after her abduction.
Hopefully it made kids aware and adults aware, it can happen to you. You hear about it being somewhere else. You never think it'll happen here in your backyard.
The massive search and the tragic discovery hard to forget, even for seasoned officers who attended the memorial.
For something like this to happen to her, I think it is probably our worst nightmare, but it's also gave us that sense of vigilance, and that's what I think really drove us all together to try to bring him to justice.
Smith sits on death row, but in the past 10 years, the church has worked with the community, sponsoring 8 kid safety rallies, among other campaigns, all in memory of a little girl gone too soon.
We're going to keep Carlie's memory alive. This will always be a place in this community where you can come, where you can remember, and where you can recommit yourself to taking care of the kids in our community.
Later on, Deputy Chief Paul McWade of the Bradenton Police Department confirmed that Joseph Smith had now become a suspect in another murder as well, the killing of 25-year-old Tara Riley. He said they were planning to have officers speak with Joseph about it while he was still on death row. Back in March 2000, Tara Riley's nude body was found in a retention pond behind a Walmart in Florida. Tips came in but none of them led anywhere solid. It was known that shortly before her death, she had been seen arguing with someone in a parking lot. About 2 years after the murder, police interviewed a person who matched the description, but there wasn't enough evidence to bring charges. Over time, the case went cold, the files gathered dust, and with each passing year, the hope of finding her killer slowly faded. Then, about 6 years later, her name surfaced again. In a recorded phone call while Joseph was in prison, he was speaking with his mother and his brother. They asked him a series of questions, and one of them was, "Did they ask you about Tara?" Joseph's brother, John, actually knew Tara Riley. They had worked together. He said that shortly before her death, she had rejected Joseph, and in his opinion, that humiliation became the motive for her murder. John said, "I'm glad this story finally pushed the authorities to start moving. It was time for something to be done. She was a good girl. She had her whole life ahead of her. She was taken from this world way too soon. And I really hope this murder is solved before my brother dies." He added that he was convinced it was his brother who was responsible for Tara's death. 17 years after Carlie was abducted and murdered, breaking news surfaced. 55-year-old Joseph Smith died at Union Correctional Institution on July 26, 2021. The cause of death wasn't announced right away, but it was later reported that he died from liver cancer. At the same time, other sources claimed his death followed complications from hepatitis C. The Florida State Attorney's Office said, "While nothing can ever bring Carlie back, we are grateful that her family, her friends, and the entire Sarasota community can finally have a sense of closure and no longer be forced to endure additional court proceedings in the pursuit of justice." Carlie's father said that when he learned of Joseph's death, he felt a sense of relief. This was a long time coming. An unprofessional and corrupt criminal justice system failed to carry it out, so in the end, the natural order of things finally set it right. Joseph Smith was never officially charged in the murder of Tara Riley, and that case remains unsolved to this day. The truth about his possible involvement in other crimes, including hers, will now most likely never be known. John said he regrets that his brother never confessed. He never truly took responsibility. He didn't confess about Carlie, and he definitely didn't confess about Tara. He died a coward, that's all.
Now, loved ones are reaching out to us again, pleading for your help to restore this garden that you see right over there.
It's dying. People are forgetting.
At one time, dozens of volunteers came every week to care for the memorial garden for 11-year-old Carlie Brucia. Now it's neglected and vandalized. Family friend Sherry Langworthy, she and her husband, along with Carlie's cousin, have worked the last 3 weeks trying to restore the garden.
I want her legacy, her memory to live on, and I want it to be kind of like an awareness thing, you know, for parents to take their kids here and teach them, you know, what can happen.
Local volunteers and businesses help to maintain the garden.
The impact of Carlie Brewer's murder was massive and long-lasting, and for her grief-stricken mother, Susan, life was never the same again, like not even close.
We're learning that Susan Shorpen has passed away. Shorpen is the mother of Carlie Brucia.
Yeah, Haley, over the years, a lot of folks have been saddened by Carlie's death. Tonight, they are all grieving for her mom.
Susan was a I believe, very dedicated mother, and she loved her daughter very much.
That's how Pastor Rod Myers of the Central Church of Christ is remembering Susan Shorpen. Died on Monday at the age of 47. Myers remembers one encounter with Shorpen very vividly.
Susan and I and Sheriff Balkwell at the time all came out, and we had a prayer near where Carlie was found, and that was a very meaningful time to me.
Carrie Brewer was only 11 years old. She still had so much ahead of her, so much life left to live, so much left to see and experience. Her future was wide open, full of promise. She was the kind of kid who made people feel loved, always greeting her friends with big hugs and a genuine smile. And it's because of those bright memories that her spirit still lives on, still feels close to everyone who knew her and loved her, as her father, Joe, put it. We talk about her all the time as a family. We have her photos all over the house. She's always in our hearts and in our thoughts. Thank you to everyone who stayed with us until the end. If you'd like to support the channel and help us keep creating content, please don't forget to hit the like button, leave a comment, share this video, and subscribe. It really does help us more than you know, and we truly, sincerely appreciate your support.